My name is Kirk. I'm your host. I'm glad to have Gordon, Don, Armis, and Joseph with me talking about, Gordon is the author of the Cashflow Cookbook. He's a speaker. And the topic of freeing up cash flow to accelerate wealth building, it comes in, I work with business owners, and that's that other side of the equation that in the business building world we don't quite get to. So a lot of times, very successful business owners, their personal side of the house isn't straight, right? And it can be painful, right? You have all the success in one area, and the other area is not so great. So just to connect the dots a little bit here, of kind of who's in the room. Hey, Don McLaren, he's my son. I've known him his whole life, right? And Don and Joseph were both cadets together at West Point, and Armis is a lifelong fan of Joseph. And so they're all at some point of life of transition where they're thinking about that next thing or where to, what to do. And getting smart about money makes sense. So we created what we call the Life Mastermind together to, brainstorm and experience share and talk to experts. They call their group Bloom, right? Things are sprouting. And getting smart about money led me to reach out to Gordon because, let's be honest, I don't know what Gordon knows on the personal side, on that wealth management. I've heard bits and pieces, but I don't know what the whole puzzle looks like. So I reached out to him, a few conversations, and I asked him, would you like to come in and do a podcast and talk with the guys to share some of your wisdom? And so all of that, Gordon, we need your help. And so what is the state of financial wellness? What are you seeing out there?
It's shocking. Most people know that people struggle. We hear the term paycheck to paycheck a lot. But if you really, I'll give you a few stats to give you an idea. And I like to look at it almost the way we go through life. So for most of us, our first major purchase is a car. And when I graduated from college, there was a 36-month car loan, a 48-month car loan. Now the average in the United States is a 72-month car loan. Increasingly popular is the 84-month car loan, and banks are now lending on 96-month car loans. Why?
Wow.
People don't have the cash flow. So the salesman wants to get you into an ever nicer car. How do you make that happen? You stretch it out, more interest payments. And a third of the cars that are coming back as cars to fund the new vehicle, those are underwater. So people owe more on their trade-ins than the vehicles are actually worth. So that's just a quick start with cars, but then we go through our lives. 85% of people are so stressed out about their money, it actually is impacting their work right now. So you start to see what happens. And then, from a marriage perspective, divorce is about 45% of marriages. 41%, the principal cause in divorce is financial related issues. They're strapped for cash flow as a couple, add stress to the marriage. Then you go through that, time to send the kids off to college or university. About half of us don't take advantage of tax advantaged 529 plans to send our kids to college. So we still have to pay the whole freight. We just don't get the government's help. Why? We don't have the cash flow to put into these plans. And then most shocking of all, when you get to retirement, here's one that is literally mind-blowing, but it absolutely is a fact. 64% of Americans will retire with less than $10,000.
64% less than 10,000.
Yep. And if you think about it, $10,000 is not a bad chunk of money, but not if you have to live on it for 30 or 40 years. So then you have people in retirement going back to their kids looking for help, which is not a great prospect for the kids. Social Security doesn't get you very far. So you start to see this crisis in personal finance.
Not to mention that Social Security is not exactly funded.
Right. It's on rocky ground, as is Medicare. So you just see all of these pressures. If you add in inflation, you add in relatively high interest rates, hopefully they'll come down. But, car loans at 7%, mortgages at 7%, that's a tough road to hoe, particularly for young people starting out.
And that's the people in the room. And Donna's on a military computer in some silo somewhere, so he'll be in and out based on how that works. And it's really three young guys in a room. I mean, how does that hit you guys? You know, 8 years to pay for a car is the norm, and when you finish all the work, you got most people have $10,000.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary.
That's
And that
why
make
that's
you
why
want to go,
I
Armis,
love
go
to
ahead.
I love to brag about my 1999 Toyota Camry because I'm not doing a 96-month term on a brand new car, you know.
That's the
Yeah,
way to do it.
it runs the ground. So Joseph, that'll make you re-enlist, not re-enlist. You're an officer, but that'll make you re-up for another 10 years,
That's
right?
how they trap you. Yep.
Man, it's safe in here. So, well, that's something. I mean, in marriage, I've been married 27, 28 years, and I can. It's very easy to say the most. We were fortunate. Our kids were healthy. They were good together, good in school. So that's a blessing right there. And so I can say, beyond a doubt, that the source of stress in my marriage, the most stressful points, I think without exception, was money.
Yep.
Sense of
Yep.
scarcity. Money is renewable, but it's tough, especially starting out. Um, so how did I mean that's a picture. I think when we get to the point where it doesn't have to be that way, is that kind of where there's a positive, safe place to go to, Gordon?
Yeah, and we'll get into that for sure. There is some really great news, and we'll get into it as we start talking about some of the ideas in Cashflow Cookbook and things that I talk about. And when I do my presentations, I do them across the United States as well as in Canada. So I've heard from all kinds of audience members bringing their questions, and the level of knowledge about personal finance is minuscule for most people. Crazy that it's not taught in high school, typically, not taught in college. It's one of the most important things we need. In fact, most of the things that you need, you don't learn in school. How to pick a spouse, how to manage your finances, how to do well in your career, how to pick your career, how to stay in shape, how to eat healthy. These are the things that you actually need in life, and we learn none of them. But we're going to fix the financial part today, Kirk.
Yeah, and let's go into that. Like how did the cash flow cookbook, how did that get started?
Well, I was working as an executive in the high tech world, companies like Apple and Dell. And what happened was originally I was dropping off a friend from a barbecue at his home. And on the way there, he looked in the console of my car and he pulled up a car wash receipt for $13. And he
Hmm.
said to me, why would you spend money on car washes? And at the time, I was an executive at Apple, I think. And, this $13 car wash was not really a focus item for me. And, so he had this
Yeah.
whole scheme where there was a loyalty program and you put a separate card in the pump before you put in your credit card and you track your points on the web and then you fill in a form and you get a free car wash. He's explaining all this to me. And I dropped him off. And once I was safely away from his house, I started thinking about this. I thought, this has got to be the dumbest idea I've ever heard of to save $13. And then I was in somebody else's car a couple weeks later, and they had this little dongle that fit on their keychain with the same gas retailer. And it was an upgrade where you touch it to the pump, and now it's done in an app, of course, but it automatically tracks your loyalty and you just get a car wash. You don't have to go through all this tracking. And I thought, well, how slick is that? So I started getting all
Hmm.
my car washes for free. Now, not that that's a huge deal, but I thought it's not a more difficult way of paying for my gas. In fact, it's easier because in January in Canada, I didn't have to take my mitts off. So it was actually better. And I'm getting these points and I'm getting a free car wash. Not a huge thing, saving $25 a month, but I thought that's pretty slick. So I
Hmm.
started gathering up these ideas. And not long after that, I heard an ad on the radio for this home alarm monitoring company. It monitors your home alarm much cheaper than most of the major brands. So I called them up and they said, well, what are you paying now? And like most people, I had no idea. You sign up for a subscription, you don't even know what it is. So I pulled up my bank account. I said, well, I'm paying 35 a month. And they said, we do it for 10. I said, you're connected to the police? They said, oh, yeah. I thought, well, this is pretty cool. So I said, sign me up. So they hooked it all up and had a few teenagers in the house. So of course, the alarm went off, and the police do in fact come. I can tell you that. But now I was paying $10 instead of 35. So $25 a month in the car wash is another $25 in the home alarm monitoring. Got my wife doing the car wash thing, $75 a month. Still not a huge thing, but it took no work. I gave up nothing. And then I started adding up all these ideas, became a list, became a spreadsheet, ultimately became a book. It was a newspaper column, and now I speak on these concepts full time.
So just to kind of build there, is it worth talking about if you save money in one place and just consume it somewhere else, it doesn't really achieve the outcome, does it? So
Right.
I think there's a bigger story. Do you want to tell the bigger story about why the cookbook? I mean, we were having that conversation before, and I think it's phenomenal because when I was reading your book, it struck out like I think Gordon knows a lot about actually cooking, not just money, but cooking, because the terms, glaze this and thinking that. I mean, it was somebody who either knows how to cook and or really likes food. Can,
I do
can you tell the
research. What's that?
Can you tell the backstory on why cookbook?
Yeah, so it was going to be, my accountants thought these were great ideas. He said this would be a book everyone should read, and that was all I needed to hear. And so I booked off some time alone to write this great personal finance novel, and I had my characters, I had the plot line, and I sat down to write it, and it just didn't fit. There was too many numbers, there was too many facts, there's too many ideas. It didn't work at all as a novel. And getting some crosstalk there. You hearing that,
Yeah,
or is it?
yeah. I was moving my mic, but it should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Start that part again. You can edit it out. So I had all of these facts, I had all these figures, and I tried to fit it into a novel. It just didn't work as a novel. And I was really frustrated, and I was ready to abandon the whole project. And then under my breath one day, I said, geez, it's more like a cookbook. And I said, oh my goodness, it's Cashflow Cookbook. And everyone loves the name, and it just stuck. So I put it up on Amazon as a book, Canadian edition back in 2018. And then I published the US edition 2023. And I've just been speaking on the book nonstop since I put it out. Everyone needs help with their finances. Everyone wants an easier way to get to financial freedom.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, just from your personal life experience, the car wash. I mean, you just never know. Armis and Joseph, you guys ever had an experience like that where you call a cable company or a competitor and it's the price difference is?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a new internet company that came into where I live in Oklahoma, competing with the only internet company, Fidelity, and they knocked down the prices by 50%. And I actually moved over to them, and Fidelity recently, they also knocked down their prices, but it was like that quick change that saved me literally about like $65 a month on just internet with more, with actually better service too. So it worked out really well.
Yeah.
And most people don't take the time. I did a talk once, and a question that often comes up, people say, well, I don't want to call Verizon. It's painful. I got to listen to bad hold music. It might take me an hour. And so I was speaking in front of a large audience, about 400 people there, and I said, okay, so I get the hour. Well, if you could free up, let's say you free up $100 a month, and you invest that $100 a month at 7% over 40 years, that would be $250,000 of after-tax money that you would have in your retirement account. And then I polled the audience and I said, okay, if I can get your hands up, everybody here who makes less than $250,000 an hour, put your hand up. Of course, everyone makes
Yeah.
$1 an hour. And I said, you people need to call your internet provider, your cell phone provider. And I said, how many of you make more than $250,000 a year? Of course, hands go up. I said, you people don't need to take the time because you're making more money than that at your jobs. Everyone got a good laugh. But what you did there, I mean, that's just one way of saving. I mean, we can go back and reshop things. There's all kinds of other things that we'll get into where Now, reshopping is just one thing. We don't have to yell, we don't have to scream, we don't have to swear. You can go back and reshop things, but there's other approaches that can free up even more cash flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's excellent. Sometimes you sign up for something, stop using it, keep paying for it forever, right? And then at some point, review your statement like, what are all these services? That was 6 houses ago.
Yeah,
You know,
sometimes sometimes you can eliminate things, sometimes you can conserve, sometimes you get smarter on things. I'll give you a couple of very recent ones that I just discovered myself, if that'd be helpful, Kirk.
yeah, definitely.
So one, and this will sound a little bit crazy, but if I said to you, put your hands up, guys, if you'd be excited about a bond that pays 300% interest. Anybody
Yeah.
interested in a 300%? That should be a bit of a no-brainer. Okay, it gets even better. It's risk-free, 100% guaranteed. It's not taxable.
Mm-hmm.
So the savings you get are not, the money you get back is not taxable. And this will sound crazy. It's something that's actually good for the environment. And I'll give you the final twist. Makes your skin incredibly soft. Now that sounds preposterous. And what it
Yeah.
is, I just recently discovered this. A Canadian company called Henson, they make razors, and they're a precision machining company. They built some parts for the Mars rover, and they have a sideline now where they make razors. And they make razors for those old-fashioned safety blades, the kind your grandfather or great-grandfather used to use. Those razors where you unscrew it and everything. So the blades, you can still get them on Amazon. They're 10 cents a blade. So now, if you get this razor, the razor costs $70 one time. It'll last forever, machined aluminum. But you save about $200 a year on razor blades. Well, that's about a 300% return if it was a bond, if you follow what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So you spend the $70 once, you get $200 a year coming in. Not a lot of things give you that kind of return in the financial world. And it gives you an incredibly smooth shave, much better than the cartridge razors. And environmentally, it's just a teeny little sliver. There's no plastic. There's not a lot of plastic and metal. Come home from the drugstore, you've got all this crap, and eventually it all ends up in the landfill. These have almost no waste. So you say, well, that's great, but it's only $200 a year. And it is. But
Mm-hmm.
there's so many more things that are just like that. So as an example, we're talking about the internet. From a TV perspective, if you're near any kind of a major city, you can get rooftop or attic or in-room antennas now, because all of the major stations are broadcast over the air. You can watch NFL football games, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, you name it. It is free, and here's the icing on the cake. There's no monthly fee to be paid, so you get rid of your $150 or $200 a month cable TV subscription, and the picture is actually better than what you get over cable because it's uncompressed video. So those antennas are about $100. So now think about the return here. You spend $100 once, put it up in your attic, or some of them can just go on the window in your house, and you might save $150 a month.
Yeah.
So you're talking about saving $2,000 a year for a $100 investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not negotiating in that case. It's innovating. It's doing something very different.
Yeah. And so it starts to stack up. You do one or two. That should whet the appetite. Then do 5 or 6 more, and it starts to stack. And then the smart thing is that compounded interest, especially if you're on the early side of life in your 20s, you got all that time. $250,000 return on some savings. What you would have spent, you would have spent the money anyway. Just redirect the savings to the better alternative.
Yeah, and they're everywhere. I'll give you another quick example. The grocery store that I go to here in Ohio, they've got a loyalty program. They give you a little card with a barcode on it, and you just go up to the customer service desk and say, hey, I want to join. Costs nothing. And they scan it every time you buy your groceries. And on your bill, it shows you the running total of how much you've saved in the last 12 months, which for us is about $1,500. This costs nothing. It's a 10-minute trip to the customer service desk to sign up. You get the little card. they're able to see what you're buying, and that helps them with their shopper behavior, whatever they do with the data. I don't care if someone knows I bought lettuce and kitty litter; it doesn't matter to me. Um, but those savings are very real. That's $1,500 a year of after-tax cash flow. You might have to make $2,000 or $2,200 to get that $1,500 that's free. It's a big deal.
Yeah, just there to set things up and let it work out. Somebody has that data anyway, whether it's a grocery store or your credit card company, somebody's got the data anyway.
Yeah.
So in your book, Gordon, you talk about the restrictive financial box. What is that?
Yeah, it's just an idea that I thought a bit about. And, Joseph and Armis and Don, when you guys are working, you're going to have an income. And if you're not working for yourself, if you're in the military, if you're working in the private sector, there's a lid on how much you're going to earn. You really can't do much to change that. Here's your salary. Maybe you can work overtime, but that's where that is. And then you can turn to your wealth advisor to try and get a bigger return on your investment. But it's not like they can't guarantee you a return. One year it might be 6%, next year it might be 8%, it might be 2%. You really can't do a lot to change that. You can't reduce what you're going to pay in taxes. That too is going to be pretty much a function. You've got your tax form from your employer. That's that. But where there's a huge opportunity is this idea of lowering expenses, and putting in a little bit of time can make a massive difference. And I would say a typical person could read my book and implement everything they need to do for a grand total of 20 hours. And what's interesting about 20 hours is that's the average amount of time that the average American spends watching television every week. So if you gave up 1 week of television, $20 for a copy of Cashflow Cookbook, and put in the remaining, 16 or 17 hours to execute on all of these ideas in the book, you could add $1,000 or $2,000 a month. You get that invested with a good wealth advisor. You might be adding $1 million, $2 million, $4 million to your retirement wealth. And at your age, that'll never come. But trust me, eventually, like Kirk and I, you get some gray hair and it does arrive.
Yeah, faster than you think. I was in the Army when I was 21. I left the Army when I was 24, so I was your age, and I can't believe I'm my age. Now, so that's phenomenal. So so 20 hours of work. I spend that watching YouTube. I'm fascinated with all these podcasts. And then you get that recurring. Once you set it up, you get the recurring. Just at that point, just do your normal behaviors, and you get the recurring benefit. With the caveat, you gotta redirect the money into something that's gonna grow.
Yeah, that's the key. So one of the things we talk about over and over again in the book, as soon as you implement one of these, I call them financial recipes, which might be, reducing your electrical bill or your gas bill, or as you talked about, Joseph, with your internet costs, your cell phone, your house insurance, your car insurance, all of these monthly recurring things. We start there. And as soon as you free up that cash flow, immediately don't look at the money, don't think about the money. Right away, you're going to go increase hopefully a contributory 401k if you have one with your employer, because they're going to match the money, or your particular circumstance, a Roth IRA might be a better choice, but whatever's the right vehicle, maybe it's a 529 plan to save for your kids' college. As soon as you free up that cash flow, you put it to what I think of as a noble pursuit. Might be paying down debt or saving for the future. The idea is not to go and fritter it away on more things that you don't need, like too many guitars.
The guitar, you could easily consume any saving. The consumption possibilities is endless.
So right away, before you look at it, you get that money saved for sure.
Hey, I have a question for you. This is kind of off the wall, but this is what pops into my mind, so you can tell what's going on. Yeah. The Amish, so you know this is going to be an off the wall question. They don't have to pay Social Security tax, right? Because they got their own community that takes care of that. Have you ever heard of anybody becoming Amish?
Just for the financial benefits? I'm not.
I'm up for it. That's like almost 14%, 13% of lifetime earnings as far as W-2 type incomes. Can you imagine? 14%, 13%. But I think that's seriously not advice for anybody. That might get you into an orange jumpsuit, right? Versus the freedom you're looking for, kind of stuff. So that's the restricted financial box. Is that if you're a W-2 employee, there is, especially as the companies, smaller companies don't have the resources, generally speaking. Larger companies have a structure, and you got to play within that framework. If you're doing that as a professional and doing these things, saving money and literally carving out this is the passive income where the money's working for you kind of thing. If you become a business owner, then you get other people working for you versus just your own active hours. So you got some pretty good across the life cycle. You got some pretty good different levers to play with. But these habits pay, right? Just why pay $35 when you can pay 10 for the same thing?
You literally see these things everywhere. When I do my talks, one of the examples I use, because I find once you get into the right headspace, it's not about being cheap. You go for a restaurant, I throw the credit card down, no problem. But it's just about being smarter on all of these recurring things. I'll just give you one more example because they show up everywhere. I got prescribed a cholesterol lowering drug, which is one of the most popular drugs in the U.S. And so I went to go get it filled at the drugstore, which is right underneath my doctor's office, which is usually the case. It's one of the big chains. I think it was Walgreens. And so I gave him the prescription to get it filled. And, she calls me over. The prescription's filled, $107. I said, well, how long do those pills run for? She said, a month. I said, these things are $107 a month? She said, yeah. And I said, well, I have to take them for the rest of my life. And she said, yeah. I said, it's kind of a lot of money. Like, $107 isn't going to break me, but I don't really need like $107 tax a month for the rest of my life. So she said, well, you could get our drug card. And I said, well, how much is the drug card? It's $20. I said, if I have the drug card, how much are the pills? Well, they go from $107 to $63 a month.
Jesus.
This is a saving, $500 a year. I just asked the question. I didn't yell. I didn't rant. I'm not being cheap. I just asked. I said, that's a little expensive. So out comes this drug card idea. Well, I'm thinking I'm a genius. I saved myself $500 a year. I was out for dinner with my brother-in-law. I tell him the story. He says, no. He says, you want to get a good RX card. I said, what's that? And he goes, well, it gives you discount codes on the drugs. You can get the drugs anywhere you need them, whatever drugstore. So I went home right away. I look up this drug. Well, it's $13.88. So I could have been paying $107. I could have been paying $63. Here's another vendor. I can get my pills for $13.88. But we're all business people, and we know if something goes from 107 to 63 to 13, we're probably not done yet. So I do a little bit more Googling. I now get these pills delivered to my house. I don't even drive to the drugstore anymore for $7 a month.
Wow.
Save 94% on my prescription drugs. Now, here's the key. What did I give up? Nothing. In fact, I have a benefit. I don't even have to drive to the drugstore. I'm saving $100 a month by just a little bit of research forever for the rest of my life. It's a big deal.
That is something. And so you really sharpen your brain to look, ask questions. Don't just accept it's $107 for these medications. You could have said, okay, but sharpen your brain to ask, well, what alternatives do I have? Go do some research. Man, that's really that's brilliant.
But it goes into everything that you do. So we talked a lot about these recurring, I call them the boring bills, the car insurance, home insurance, cell phone, TV, all of these things. Everybody has 10, 12 of these monthly bills. But then once you get into the headspace of it, it makes you stop and think before you buy anything. So a great example of this guitar that you see right over my shoulder is my Taylor. I bought it brand new for about $2,000. And when I bought it, it's a great guitar. I use it all the time. Once you pay for a guitar, you own it. And playing the guitar costs nothing after that, which is one of the great things about the hobby. But then I uncovered this interesting fact from the Fender Guitar Company. And what they'll tell you is that 94% of people who buy a guitar quit within 1 year. Now, why does that? It's not surprising if you've played the guitar because it's not easy. It takes a lot of work. It's you can't just go out there like David Lee Roth after 10 minutes of instruction. But what it means is if 94% of people are giving up within a year, that means there's a whole lot of pristine used guitars out there, and they go for about 40% of the price of new ones. So once I figured that out, that means that I could get a whole lot more guitars because they're 40% of what they cost, and they're brand new. This Stratocaster right there with a white pick guard, I got that for $1,000. It would cost you about $2,700 to get one out the door. It still had all the hang tangs on it. It had been untouched. So it's just a different way of thinking about it.
Well, I'm gonna bring the feelings to this. Like getting that kind of deal, it just feels good, right? You're not. Sometimes if I buy something, I kind of got buyer's remorse. I'm not sure if that was a good deal afterwards. But when you're doing that, you can be pretty confident you got a good deal, right? So you feel good about it, and you have a guitar to play with. I mean,
Right.
what makes
It goes into everything that you buy. You just get smarter. When you think about, the two of you as young people, I think of my son. He graduated with an engineering degree, and he's lived through the whole Cashflow Cookbook. He lived through me writing it. So he graduates, engineering degree, great salary, and the first thing he says to me, calls me, says, "Dad, I got this job offer." I go, "Way to go! That's fantastic. Here's one more child launched. How great is this?" And he says, "But I got a question." What's that? He says, "How do I negotiate my starting package?" And I thought to myself, the thought never would have even occurred to me when I got my first big job offer graduating from college. How do you negotiate the package? Who does that? So I gave him a few pointers, and he calls me back. He says, "Dad, like I got another $4,000 a year, and they gave me a $2,000 moving allowance, and so on and so forth." Anyway, so he gets out and he's working. Of course, you got this great job, you're making good money. You got to have a nice set of wheels, right? And I'm a bit like you, so he does the research and he figures out the best car is a 5-year-old Toyota Corolla because it's the lowest total cost of ownership. He gets his Toyota Corolla. He borrows the $6,000 from me or whatever it was, pays it back in 4 months, and no more car payments. Exactly, almost like what you were talking about. And now he has no car payments. And of course, you have to get yourself a really nice pad, a nice apartment. You're graduating, making good money. So instead, he gets himself a roommate app, and he finds this house with 3 other guys and pays about $500 a month. No car loan. His rent is $500 a month. So he maxes out his 401k with the company matching it, maxes the stock plan, maxes out his Roth IRA and everything else. And he had a 60% savings rate. He saved 60% of his gross income, and I believe he still does. Now he's, doing even better. But it's just a headspace. It's thinking a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's great. So he picked up a few things looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, and he sends me a text, "Dad, I got another recipe for you for the book." He's taken this to heart, but he has a fantastic lifestyle. You call him, he's skiing in Park City. Where are you? Oh, well, I'm in Venezuela. He's all over the place. He travels. He has a great time. But most of his travel he does on airline points. He's got the whole credit card thing figured out. He just gets a little bit smarter and all this stuff. Fantastic lifestyle. His wealth is just accelerating, and he's having a blast.
And that's something when you have wealth, if something happens like temporary unemployment, that kind of stuff, you're okay. No problem, kind of stuff. What is, Mr. Joseph, what is anything popping out to you?
Armis, you want to take this one?
Yeah, not all at the same time, right? But honestly, I think I like how you're just keying in on a lot of the low hanging fruit, because I think it's nice when you see authors, people who are putting content out there. A lot of people want to try to change the system, right? That's kind of causing people to have financial struggles. That's a lot harder to do than equip, a bunch of individuals to have actionable ways to improve their financial situation. So I'm really just enjoying taking it in. And there's things that I'm like marking off. I'm like, hey, I'm good on the points, or, I have the paid off old Camry. And then there's other things that I'm like, oh, let me remember that one.
Yeah.
There's 60 recipes right there in the book. There's gotta be do one and something new that you haven't done, and see where that takes you. Because I think momentum is started with that first step, and you start to well, shoot, I like that. So cool. What about you, Joseph?
No, yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with Armis with what he was saying. It's just the low-hanging fruit, I think, was a great analogy to it. And I think sometimes people just need to hear something in a simple form, and the recipe breaks it down, you
Hmm.
know, very easily for anybody, regardless of what industry they work in, regardless of what, where they are social, like, economically. So it can relate to literally anybody, which is why I think it's one, very popular, and two, very well understood, and three, it works. So it just makes a lot of sense, and it's one of those things that you would never know that it made sense until someone just tells you about it. And you're like,
All
oh,
right.
why couldn't I think of that? And then obviously, kind of like this compounded interest idea, it's the most powerful thing in all of finance, whether it's personal finance or business. And this being applied to personal finance, like people can literally become rich from doing these smallest things, like 20 hours a week, like you had mentioned, or just separating that 20-hour a week to save you, who knows, you know?
Yeah, and it's just one. You only need 1 week of doing
Yeah,
that. You're going to
absolutely.
spot new things as they come along the rest of the time. But most people can jump in, put in 10, 20 hours, go through their bills, take a look at smarter ways of doing things, use the recipes right in the book. It literally is laid out just like a recipe,
Yeah.
all 60 of them, and the impact is tremendous. I mean, at the age of the two of you, you know, each each $100 you save over 40 years, that's $250,000 on
Hmm.
just saving $100. So you get a little smarter, contrast somebody going out and buying a new car on even a 70-month loan or a 60-month loan. Think of the interest and the depreciation, everything that they're going to face versus what Armis has done with his older Camry. That's brilliant stuff. And you know what? Your friends will go, "Oh, look at you with the old Camry. Check out my new F-150." And you just go, "Okay, brother, no problem. Knock yourself out." Because, the difference over you using that kind of an approach with a super reliable car, and it probably still runs and drives great, you're going to make those kinds of decisions over your entire life. You literally will end up with an extra 3, 4, $5 million if you put that kind of thinking in everywhere. And what are you giving up? Nothing.
Not nothing. You're still living your life. You're having a great time doing what you care about. You're just not paying as much as the person next to you for the same thing,
Yep.
right? You know, you know, and man, you guys are in a good position, right? You got good starts in your lives. You got options stuff. So Gordon, you talk about the two key numbers to track to build wealth. What does that mean?
Well, it's interesting, people get all fussed about, oh, the budgeting and I've got to, have an emergency fund, all of these things. I think the first number that you want to really get familiar with, it's a very simple concept, but most people don't know the number, and it's their savings rate. So it's what percentage of your gross income are you saving every year to build wealth? So simple example, let's say your salary is $100,000 a year, just for ease of math. And if you're saving $4,000 a year, that's 4%. Your savings rate is 4%. On 4%, if you keep saving at 4% for your entire life, you will retire never.
Yeah,
So you want that number to be at bare minimum of 10%. So you need to save $10,000 if you're earning $100,000 a year. Better is 15%. And a lot of people say, oh, I can't possibly do that because I've got this and that. There's always a smarter way of doing it. So
Hmm.
that's the first number, is know your savings rate. And if right now your savings rate is 4% or it's 5.5%, you want to build a path to getting that to 10 or 15%. It's the most important thing you can do. There are no excuses, whatever your student loans, that's just what you're going to do because it's well worth it. And how do you get there? Well, rather than giving things up, you just do things a bit smarter. You don't get the brand new car, you get the older, a 5-year-old Camry or whatever it is, and use all these ideas in the book. So that savings rate is the first thing. Second thing is make yourself a spreadsheet. You can get it on cashflowcookbook.com. There's a template on there. But really very simple. It's good exercise to do the spreadsheet anyway. And that is to track one second very simple number, which is your wealth. And your wealth is just what you own being houses, cars, not so much clothing or furniture, but houses, cars, your Roth IRA balance, your 401k balance, things that you own. And from that, you subtract the things that you owe: credit cards, home equity lines of credit, mortgages, whatever you have. And what's left, some people call it your net worth. I don't like the term because we're worth more than our money. I call it wealth, net worth, wealth, whatever it is. You have some value there. And the bigger that number is, the more choices, the more options you have. You want to go, build a school in Nairobi. Well, you can take time off and build a school in Nairobi. You want to give more money to your church or some other charity. You can do it because you have some wealth. And that wealth can continue to grow over time. You want to retire early. You want to join the family business, whatever it is. Tracking that wealth is so important because what it says, rather than budgeting, you could budget and say, okay, am I spending less than my $5,000 a month? And you'll track that every year forever, but maybe you're not building any wealth. Yeah. So what really matters, the number you really want to track is your wealth. So let's say, after your loans or whatever, you got a wealth number or a net worth number of $10,000. But you're going to pay down that car loan further. You're going to pay down your mortgage further. Your investments are going to grow. And next year, what's it at? Well, whoa, you're at $36,900. Terrific. You're on the path. And watching that number grow every year, it's kind of a gamification. Because now when the question comes up, hey, I'd really like to get the new car I saw on TV. That looks really cool. You're going to go back to your spreadsheet and say, hey, if I don't get that, I'm a little bit smarter, I stretch that for another year, look what happens to my wealth number. And then you get to a point where maybe you're 40 years old, 35, 40, whatever it is, you have $1 million. Well, now that thing really starts to accelerate because if you have a decent year in the market, house prices go up, you're paying things down, the $1 million, it might grow by 10%. So 1 year later, you've got $1.1 million in there. So now you start getting excited about that. That's a whole lot more exciting than some new shirts or a bunch of fancy dinners out. Maybe you're going to say, hey, I don't need an appetizer. So you just get a little bit smarter on dining out. You want a coffee, you brew one at home for 30 cents and you take it to work instead of the Starbucks one for $6. Do the math on that. You can spend $200-300 a month on snacks and coffee. That's a big difference if you get that invested. So what's your savings rate? And always be looking at that. And if it's below 15%, grind it up there, $100 a month at a time. Get it up there and then track this wealth. Those are the two that I think matter, Kirk.
Those are really good. And I'm going to put out there the law of adaptation, where if whatever it is, if they hit that 10% mark, 15% mark, for most people, if you just do it, you'll adapt. You'll cut out things that really aren't that important to you, or you'll do things differently. So get to the 10% at least there, and then get addicted to building wealth. I heard you loud and clear versus budgeting. I didn't spend more money than I make, which is good. It's really good if you got the wealth piece. That's what's going to make a difference in your life. Is that kind of what the message is? Which is money.
Yeah. And to get there, the other thing I like to do, I like people setting up 2 checking accounts. And one is the bill payment account. So just use numbers for ease of math. Let's say that these will be bigger numbers, but just for ease of math. Let's say your income is after tax is $10,000 a month. And let's say that your recurring bills, house insurance, car insurance, life insurance, cell phone, TV, all that stuff, for argument's sake, $5,000. So you set up a bill payment checking account. You divert $5,000 a month goes into that account, and it pays. And let's say your bills are $4,800, so you got a little bit of wiggle room in there. But the gas bill, the electric bill, all these things are relatively fixed every month. So that account, the money goes in out of your paycheck, and it pays all of those bills. You set up automatic bill payment. That means the other account is, $5,000 going in there for groceries, clothing, the variable kinds of things, trips, whatever. Now, hopefully you're saving something, and I like that saving to come off the top. So right off your paycheck, it's going to go into your 401k, etc. But what you
Mm-hmm.
want to do now is that $5,000 of bills, or 3 or 7 or whatever it is, you want to look at each and every one of those things. You want to grind them down. And as soon as you grind them down, you're going to commit that money to your 401k, your Roth IRA, whatever it may be, maybe mortgage pay down if you have a high interest rate mortgage. So now that thing just keeps getting ground down. So what you're going to need in the future is you're just going to need to fund it with maybe $4,000 a month. You got an extra 1,000 going into paying down the mortgage faster. That's what's relevant. Roth IRA, 401k, 529 plan for your kids' education. So see what happens. So now the budgeting part is really very simple because the bill payment account's going to look after itself. You don't even have to do anything. You just go in and go find yourself a new project every now and again to shrink that thing down. Your discretionary fund, go spend your money, have fun. You've got 15% automatically saving a month. The bills are paying themselves. So the only budgeting you have to do is just make sure you don't spend all your, whatever it is, $5,000 a month. And you're going to start, because you're going to get the fever now, you're going to start to get a little bit smarter. You're going to go out for dinner and with your date, and she says, what about dessert? You say, let's split one.
Yeah.
Let's split an appetizer. We'll split dessert. When the waiter comes by and says, can I get you a bottle of sparkling water for the table? You say, no, I'd like a tap water.
Mm-hmm.
So, simple. Did you still have a nice date? Of course you had a great date. Did you have a nice conversation? Sure you did. Are you furthering your relationship? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But are you saving 25% on the bill every time you go? Yep. Right? It's a bit smarter.
I'll share with you. You can go to Texas Roadhouse and you can split the entree and still have enough for 4 people. Right? I mean, some of these places, man, the plates are huge. So my wife and I did that for a long time, and it wasn't financial. It's just like, man, there's a lot of meat. Right?
You go to Chipotle, $10 for Chipotle. I mean, that's a big pile of food for me anyway. So I get the whole, I kind of halve it in half, and I eat my half. I put the rest in the fridge, and there's tomorrow's lunch. $5 a meal, not bad.
Yeah, yes. And so you can actually be healthy, live the life you want to live, just not be excessive, and intelligently, for every incremental amount, put it someplace that's going to work for you, even when you're sleeping, right? The money in the markets, there's some volatility over time. Assuming that we have a country, which we do, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the thing. And, sometimes people say, what about inflation? So, inflation is going to be what it's going to be. But here's what's interesting. I was able to slice my electricity bill in half in my house. Details are in the book. But just a handful of smart changes to the home, reducing my electricity consumption by half, saves me about $100 a month. Here's what's cool. Let's say inflation comes and the electric bill goes up every month. Well, great. So do my savings. So that one time that I took the time to put in a setback thermostat, weather strip, do a few other bit of insulation, a few other simple things like that, I just keep saving that money every month. And even better, my savings keep going up every month. What am I doing? Nothing. I'm having a great life. I didn't give up anything. I'm not even turning the temperature down. No one in the house is complaining about the heat or the cold. It's just getting that much smarter. Leave it where it was.
yeah, yeah. So here's a question I want to kind of bring things home. Here's the question: What advice do you have for married people? Because you come into it, you have a certain way of thinking. It could be Joseph, Armis, it could be Don, but maybe the other person isn't thinking the same way. So what advice do you have?
Marry the right person. And you know what? That one's kind of twofold because, you can have this thing of the spender and the saver, and that's an issue. If you're the saver and the spender wants to keep spending, and they haven't got into this headspace because it's not about giving anything up. You have a fantastic life, beautiful guitars, everything's first class. You just do it smarter. But some people, they're not wired that way. They see a Starbucks, they have to get a Starbucks. Half the time they don't even drink the coffee, but they just have this spending mindset. So that's the first thing in picking a spouse. The second thing is if you get it wrong, as I did in my first marriage, it's incredibly expensive to get out of it. So years and years and years of hard work and careful savings and investment go out the door with the divorce lawyer. So I'm only half joking when I say probably one of the biggest things is picking the right partner. And if you already got the partner, then you really need to work together. You need to communicate. And that's where that tracking the wealth idea is really important, because rather than having a conversation about, hey, can we get that new Persian rug? It's only $4,000. Now you're saying, okay, where do we want to go as a couple, and where do we see ourselves in retirement? Would we want to have a vacation home? Would we want to travel a lot? Do we want to go on cruises? Then you work backwards. Well, how much money is that going to take? Therefore, here's the pool of capital we're going to need at retirement. We're going to need whatever it is, $2.2 million, 3.6, 1.4, whatever the number is that you arrive at. Then you back up to how much cash flow you need to be putting in, get that whole projection done. So you can do what happened last year and the year before. Then you can sort of say what's going to happen this year. And then you just go ahead and project it. You're going to grow your investments at 6%. You're going to, Social Security is going to go up at 4% a year. You put in all your assumptions in your spreadsheet. Now you have something as a couple to work from. So you don't have to fight over every rug and every new car and everything else. You can say, hey, are we on track in our plan, or are we not? And if we're not, that means we can't have the carpet, right? So you just got to think a little bit differently. And as an aside on the carpet, I don't know if you can see it, but here I've got a beautiful hand knotted Persian rug. It's about $4,000 carpet. Facebook Marketplace, $500, brand new, freshly cleaned. A lovely older couple. They bought it 4 years earlier. They were redecorating, going to a different color.
Yeah, that's a huge. You just got to look around, be patient, buy quality, take care of it, right? Whatever vehicles, other stuff.
Buy quality. That's exactly right.
Yeah, take care of stuff. So what do you guys think?
No, I think this is great. I feel like I need to start reevaluating my life now a little bit and trying to identify where I'm slipping up. Uh,
Mhm.
and I'm excited. I'm gonna definitely check out that spreadsheet that you have on your website.
Mhm.
And then reevaluating all of this. I think it is exciting because I think initially people might think of this as a chore, but then kind of like you had mentioned, Gordon, about like getting that fever. So like once you start seeing those numbers kind of move, because the numbers always do the talking. So once you see those going in a positive direction, um, you know, you're bound to get the fever, and then that will also exponentially grow your interest into continuing to save as you hopefully increase your overall income throughout your career or your life, whatever it is that you're doing. So it is extremely exciting. So this is like a gateway drug to almost becoming more financially literate for your
Yeah.
personal finances. So it's super exciting. Like I think this is like this book and your concept is a great opportunity for people to turn things around with
Yeah.
very little effort and resources.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. Get yourself a copy of the book, and you get my email from Kirk. Let me know how it
got it
goes
right
through. But you've got
here.
Love it.
terrific.
And Armis, how about you?
Yeah, I almost got up and turned off the lights while you were talking. Because I just looked up and I was like, oh my God, they're all on in the apartment. But I think it's interesting because this definitely resonates with everybody in this call, right? But I don't know if it's a very American thing or a very modern thing, but we're living in the age of consumerism, right? And everybody
Yeah.
consumes and consumes. And I feel like maybe it's my generation because that's who I'm around the most, but you said something interesting that you're worth more than your money. And I think for
Mhm.
some people, their money does kind of become their worth. And so when they hear the idea of not being able to do whatever they want on a whim with their money, it feels like restrictive to maybe
Mhm.
their identity even. And I might be getting kind of off the path here, right? But I imagine you talk to a lot of people about their finances. How do you kind of navigate that when you can lay out the cookbook literally, but if the person's paradigm is kind of so shifted that they could care less what's in there, like, is that something you try to tackle as an author or just a financial advisor almost?
It's a fantastic point. Really, really great point you're making. And it's just interesting. It's a human nature thing, because the identical thing happens with exercise. and Joseph, you've been through West Point, you know what exercise is, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, but same thing happens with exercise. Like everybody wants the six-pack abs and everything, but oh, it's so hard to walk around the block. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not going to bother doing that. Same thing happens with food and diet. Do you
Mhm.
want the fries or the salad with that? Oh, give me the fries. And you go, well, the salad's a whole lot healthier, all that saturated fat, the triglycerides and the heart attack and the, atherosclerosis and the hyperlipidemia and the blah, 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 blood pressure. Want the fries. You didn't hear me. So it's a different headspace. And most people won't make even the tiniest of changes. So whether it's diet, it's exercise, in your career, hey, you know what? Take the time to research the person that you're going to be meeting with and be able to talk to them a little bit about what you learned from their LinkedIn profile. Yeah, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
But
all of these things are all about doing better in life and making these steps. And you're right, of the people who hear my message, read the book, what percent is going to go do it and make a difference? If it's one person, I'm happy. I know tons of people have had benefit from it, but lots of people won't make that very first step.
yeah. The I just want to highlight what you said much earlier in this conversation. It's gamified, that spreadsheet. Like you can literally look at if I go from 5 to 10, and you can see how it plays out. Oh, and then your decision, this car versus that car. So you get into actually making the full decision based on what you really care about, and it is peace of mind where you go at all stages of life. Sometimes there's health problems. Sometimes you got to go change where you're at to take care of somebody else. If you have wealth behind you, right, not just your bills paid this month, but if you have wealth behind you, you're like, I can go. If I need, it's a big hit, but I'm gonna go for 6 months as a broad example. You can do it with peace of mind. If you're living, when family are living, paycheck to paycheck, ooh, and something's going to happen for sure in life. There's going to be a glitch. There's going to be a kink for sure, right? So it's just a matter of time before it gets really painful.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you gamify it. Definitely for folks out there, grab a copy of the book. I mean, go through it. Commit to doing one. Just do one. I do think it's the gateway to doing 2 and 3. Um, and I've seen business owners make good businesses, making a good top line, and good household income, but they don't have anything to show for it. Like the lottery winner, right? They just burn it. And I know one guy who sold his business for more money than I got, and he was buying Range Rovers on the way home, right? Like more than one on the phone. And the money didn't last. I mean, literally less than 5 years, it was gone, and he had to start all over because he thought the money at that point was unlimited. And no, it was a lot, but it wasn't unlimited. And so he learned something. But take some of these recipes that Gordon's putting out there and live your life, but live it with why am I paying 35? I can pay 10 and put the other 25 into a better place where the money's working for me. I mean, when Gordon says it sounds obvious, but it's not, right?
Yeah.
Because consumption takes over, do this, do that. So Gordon, I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm going to share this with my audience out there, and we'll talk in the mastermind. We'll talk about Joseph, Armis, and Don, and I will talk about how to put this to use. And we're coming out with the life. We have a freedom platform, the life module, which gets into this stuff, and so we'll figure out how to follow through on some of the things that you're teaching us. So
Sounds great.
Gordon, thank you so much for jumping on here.
Yeah, real pleasure and great to meet everyone. All the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you,
My
Gordon.
pleasure. All right, take care now.